Australia is the Earth's driest continent, and the rains that bring it water are uncertain and irregular. But in spite of the stresses caused by the extremes of flood and drought, our freshwater systems support a rich community of animals and plants, many of them unique to Australia. This is a world that few have ever seen, a world of strange beauty and savage death. It revolves around the age-old struggle to eat without being eaten. The phytoplankton, microscopic plants, are eaten by the zooplankton, minute animals, like the rotifer, so called because of the circle of fine hairs that continually beat a stream of food towards its mouth. The water flea, a tiny crustacean, is so transparent that you can even see its heartbeat. It wafts plankton into its mouth with the rapid beat of its limbs. In its turn, a water flea might fall prey to the nymph of the damselfly, just one of many insects that live in the water in the larval stage. But as adults, their environment will be air, not water. One day, this underwater predator will become a free-flying insect. And so will another formidable hunter, the nymph of the dragonfly, often called a mud-eye. A small fish is too much of a mouthful, even for a mud-eye. A damselfly nymph is not. Along the Billabong floor, the mud-eye stalks its prey with sinister concentration and strikes with deadly speed. So one predator falls victim to another and is chomped to pieces. The mud-eye has internal gills. The damselfly breathes through feather-like attachments at the tip of the abdomen, which the mud-eye nonchalantly bites off. They both share an incredible attack weapon, a hinged lower jaw that's a combination of lasso with knife and fork. Its operation is almost impossible to see at normal speed, but clear in slow motion. If the damselfly is a link in the food chain, so is the mud-eye. Any moment from now, he himself may be taken and eaten by a fish. The steady throb in the abdomen is simply the process of breathing. The mud-eye's gills are in its rear end, and it breathes by pumping water in and out. When threatened, it can force the water out quickly, producing an effective form of jet propulsion. The Macquarie perch, for one, has a keen appetite for mud-eyes. But these days, it's not much of a threat, for like so many species of native fish, it's suffered greatly from the activities of man. mud-eye that manages to survive may spend several years in its freshwater home. But as time passes, important changes are taking place under the larval skin. The wing buds slowly begin to take shape. Finally comes its remarkable transformation, filmed here for the first time in such close detail. When it leaves the water, it changes from a water-breathing insect to an air breather. This dragon-like creature is about to become one of nature's most beautiful creations, the dragonfly. It's as if a hydraulic engineer was at work somewhere in the creature's body, turning on the valves at the right time to send surges of blood to different areas. First, the blood is pumped to the head and the middle of the back, causing a split in the old mud-eye casing. Then the wing buds are pumped apart, forcing the crack down the length of the body, until at last the head of the new dragonfly breaks free. The old breathing tubes of the mud-eye are pulled out, white stripes that look rather like parachute harness. They're followed by the legs, extracted like fingers from a glove. At no stage in its life will the creature be quite so vulnerable. That's why the transformation takes place under the cover of darkness. For the next 5 minutes, the blood supply is concentrated on the legs. As blood is pumped into them, they become, pair by pair, strong and rigid. This is a vital sequence because those legs have to be strong enough to hold the insect for the next stage of development. They have to be able to take the whole body weight when the dragonfly finally flips free from its old skin. It now hangs helpless while the taps are switched once again and the surge of blood expands the wings. The process is speeded up here. It normally takes about half an hour. At last, the transformation is complete, and the dragonfly is ready for its maiden flight. It may fly over 1 kilometer from here, and if it's a male, it may establish a territory that it will defend, not only against males of its own species, but other insects as well. A kookaburra, largest of the kingfishers, always watching, diverted now by the fascinating courtship ritual of a pair of scorpion flies. Scorpion flies feed on many of the insects newly emerged from the water, but in early summer, the males go hunting for more than just food. That's the male on top. He's holding a fly in his mouth, and he's using it in a very male chauvinistic way to distract the attention of the female. She may be hungry, but the male's appetite is clearly of a different kind, and only when he gratifies his carnal urge will he hand the fly over. Blatant bribery, virtue overcome. Sacred kingfishers on their hunting perch with a mud-eye snatched from the water. The female on the right is hungry, so she mimics a juvenile begging act and persuades the male to feed her. The mud-eye has to be softened up a little before being swallowed, head first. Drifting over the surface of the Billabong are floating water plants. This is azolla, a pink water fern. But the little mass of pale blobs isn't a plant. It's a giant male water bug, carrying his parental responsibilities around with him. He's well camouflaged. He acts as a mobile hatchery. The eggs he carries on his back were laid there by a female. It's his job to look after them. He has to come up to the surface regularly for air, and he'll stay there when the eggs are about to hatch. As camouflage, the eggs are nothing compared with the astonishing shelters of the caddisfly nymph. These may be made of bits of leaf, or they may be built like improbable little log cabins. There are few creatures in the freshwater world that can match the caddisfly nymph's architectural skill, captured in this unique sequence of film. The cabin's shorter than a fingernail, and to build it, the nymph will use any fibre that's at hand, but it seems to prefer the roots of the bulrush. The caddis measures sections of root with its legs, then chews them off. It cleans them of debris before coating them with glue from a gland under its neck. It can revolve the whole house quite easily to find a place for the new section. Sometimes the result isn't very workmanlike. Like the rest of us, the caddisfly can make mistakes. But generally, the houses are effective shelters for the pupal cases from which the adults will emerge. In the meantime, they are highly maneuverable homes. The beacon-like eye of a yabby watches from the bottom. Yabbies are freshwater crayfish and a popular delicacy. Australian children catch them with a lump of meat tied to a piece of string. Crustaceans are generally remarkable for the specialized modifications to their various limbs. Yabbies are no exception. In the females, the swimming legs under the body are also used as a sort of baby carriage. Here, the young yabbies spend the first few days of their lives, clinging to the swimmerettes on which the eggs were originally laid. Up to 100 eggs may be produced in a batch, but only a few will become mature yabbies. The rest will fall victim to the life struggle around them. Yabbies are great diggers. They use their pincers to excavate burrows and will even undermine earth dams in the process. Deep in their burrows, they can survive long periods of drought. The yabby is a scavenger, clearing up debris from the bottom and feeding on dead or dying fish. Its way of eating is rather like the operation of a factory assembly line, but in reverse. Instead of the product being put together, it's torn up, chewed and swallowed in a series of movements that resembles the working of a conveyor belt. Pincers, maxillipeds, mandibles, all have their different functions to perform. At the surface, some strange stork-like creatures perform a jerky ballet. These are mosquito larvae, better known as wrigglers. To us, they live an upside-down existence, head down, tail up. Fringes of hair sweep small particles of food into the mouth, while at the other end, a breathing tube is pushed through the surface of the water. To a western carp gudgeon, wrigglers are fair game, but enough of them survive to graduate to tumblers. This is the pupal stage, but unlike many other insects at this time of life, the tumblers are active. They continue to breathe from the surface, only now there are two tubes joined to the thorax. Slowly, the adult mosquito forms inside the tumbler until it's ready to emerge on the surface. Finally, another familiar insect is launched. Having left its underwater life behind, the mosquito must never again break through the surface skin of the water. To do so would mean death by drowning. There are many species of mosquito in Australia, particularly in the warmer areas, and there's hardly a patch of inland water from tiny puddle to large lake that hasn't been used to produce a new generation. At close quarters, the compound eyes of the mosquito give it a formidable appearance, which is no illusion. However, it's only the females that drink blood, and they have to do this before their eggs will mature. Few people anywhere in the country can have escaped their bloodthirsty attentions. The banks of creeks and billabongs are the home of the native water rat. Apart from the platypus, it's the only Australian mammal that's adapted to an aquatic habitat. In nests lined with bark, twigs and grasses, water rats have litters of up to 4 young several times during spring and summer. The young become independent after about a month. Although water rats are fairly prolific breeders, their numbers increase only gradually. This may be due to their short lifespan and their susceptibility to disease. They're also preyed upon by snakes and birds, and in some states of Australia they're trapped for their fur. But their true element is the water, where they're superbly adapted as an aquatic predator, with streamlined head, short fur, webbed feet, and a strong tail. Their eyes, nostrils and ears are set high in the head like those of a crocodile, so they can see, breathe and hear while almost totally submerged. They feed on fish, snails, yabbies and also young water birds and eggs. Fighting is common among both males and females. They often carry the scars of past battles. It isn't only a startled yabby that has reason to avoid this animal's aggression. By comparison, the Murray cod seems to radiate a majestic calm, or perhaps it's just a resigned acceptance. For the largest of all Australian freshwater creatures is finding coexistence in the modern world rather difficult. This fish can weigh as much as 90 kilograms. It's among the largest freshwater species in the world, which is quite an achievement in the tough Australian conditions. But modern river management has cruelly depleted its numbers. Once it was common enough in most parts of the River Murray system, satisfying its voracious appetite among the submerged logs on the riverbed. But many of its familiar logs have been removed to clear snags, and more seriously, its breeding habits have been upset by the release of stored water from large dams. Murray cod need comparatively warm temperatures to stimulate spawning. Released water comes from the bottom of the dam and is much too cold. The Murray cod has always been a popular fish with human predators, both for its great size and good eating qualities. Up to the 1950s, it was the chief catch of the commercial inland fisheries of the southeast. Today, it's difficult to find in its one-time home, the River Murray and its tributaries, and seems to flourish best in colonies that have been established in lakes away from the river, like Charliegrach in Western Victoria. We don't know enough about the biology of the Murray cod to ensure its continued existence by artificial means. But in 1955, the species was given a new lease of life by a chance experiment. Officers of the Victorian Fisheries and Wildlife Department released a number of cod here at Lake Charliegrach. The colony prospered, no one knows exactly why, and since then descendants of the original fish have been dispatched to establish other colonies in other lakes. The operation of Lake Charliegrach is nothing like a trout hatchery. The fish breed without human encouragement. The only interference is to protect some of the young fish from natural dangers so that they can go on to bigger things. The most famous of all Australia's freshwater inhabitants seems to have managed the changing environment rather better. Many of the secrets of this remarkable animal still remain hidden. The platypus builds elaborate burrows in the riverbank and hides most of its affairs from the eyes of man. Because of this, it has always been difficult to study in its natural environment, where it has only very rarely been captured on film. Early biologists were baffled by the platypus. In fact, the first skins to arrive in London were thought to be a hoax, for the Chinese were then adept at manufacturing unlikely biological specimens for sale to gullible Europeans. But this versatile and very flexible animal was soon proved a reality, and truth was almost stranger than fiction. At first, they called it an amphibious animal of the mole variety, but when they learned it laid eggs and suckled its young, they had to think again. After years of argument, a new biological category had to be recognized for the platypus and one other animal, the echidna, another Australian. They remain the best known of the world's few monotremes. The famous duck bill that once seemed so at odds with the rest of the animal is a remarkable instrument. Under the water, the platypus is blind. Eyes and ears remain shut, and the bill is the only sensory organ in operation. Despite its duck-like appearance, it's quite soft and pliable. It's very sensitive to touch, and there's a theory that even the flaps around the head have a tactile function, like whiskers in other animals. The feet have strong claws for digging. In the water, flaps of skin extend beyond the claws of the front feet, giving the platypus a set of very efficient paddles. But when it's walking or burrowing, the flaps are folded under the palms. The males carry poisonous spurs on their back legs, the source of another argument. Are they merely defensive weapons, or grappling hooks for mating, or both? The platypus feeds almost continuously. It seems to have a remarkable appetite, although observations in captivity suggest it may starve to death if given only one type of food. The bill investigates by touch and is often used to sift through mud in search of worms, tadpoles, insect larvae such as mud-eyes and other small water animals. The adult platypus has no teeth, only horny pads with which to chew its food. Many a yabby has disappeared forever in the steady grind of duck-billed jaws. We should want the platypus to survive, not just because he's a unique and ancient animal, but because he's part of a total environment in which man's long-term welfare is inextricably linked with that of all the other animals who share it with him. And it's these needs of tomorrow that we must keep in mind when we're making the decisions of today about how and where the waters will flow.